Welcome into today's episode of Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. My name is Madelyn Burke, alongside the Paul Dottino. The phone number here, 201-939-4513, or find us on social media using hashtag GiantsChat. We're coming at you live from the Giants podcast studio, presented by Hackensack Meridian Health. Keep getting better. Paulie Dots, can you believe it? The 2025 New York Giants season is in the books.
You know, Madelyn, baggy day is what we used to call it back in the day. Nowadays, the guys have these boxes, these mailer boxes now.
Lockers have gotten a bit bigger, and there's a bit more than fits in a baggie.
Yeah. I don't know if those hefty bags or whatever brand you use can hold all of the stuff that these guys are taking home with them. But we always used to talk about baggy day in kind of a glum way because it was the end of a season. Usually, remember, unless you're the last team that gets to hold up the Lombardi Trophy, you didn't get what you wanted. Mm-hmm. So it was usually kind of a bummer and the start of a rough off season because you had to start from scratch again. You're 0-0, and now you have to build up to whatever it is that you're hoping to accomplish. This locker room, in all the years I've been doing this locker room, for having such a frustrating and difficult season and poor record, quite frankly, is probably the most upbeat, most optimistic, most hopeful, most together locker room under these circumstances that I have ever seen.
Yeah. And that's a long time. You've been covering this.
43 years.
Yeah.
And you covered some pretty rotten teams in the NBA.
Yeah.
And I don't know if, you obviously don't have as many players in that locker room in an NBA.
But also, this is my 10th season with this Giants franchise as well, and we've had our ups and downs here.
Okay, but combining both sports.
Yeah.
Are you on board with me, or have you seen?
Oh, I agree. Yeah, I agree. Because there's a difference. There's a difference between a team that is not having success and that is just complacent with that or accustomed to that and accepting of that, which I've been around in the past. Or a long time ago, 27-win Clippers season days. Then you're around teams that I think are not doing well but not expecting more of themselves. Whereas this team is a team that, yes, they had 4 wins this season. That is not what they wanted. But they expect more of themselves, and they do genuinely feel like the picture is clear of how that can come about. They're not in a situation, they're not in a position in which you look at it and think, okay, here we are, how do we get to there? The how feels attainable, understandable, approachable, which is a different mindset. And when you have that, plus there are a lot of questions, there are a lot of unanswered things. Who is going to be the next head coach of this team? What players are going to stay and go in free agency? A lot of big factors in that regard. However, the young nucleus of this team and the leadership that we've seen, Abdul Carter, stepping up and speaking to the team after the Giants Week 18 win. And, I talked to him this morning. We sat down for an interview that you'll see later on Giants.com. And he said, I just felt called to do that. I wanted to step up and I wanted to make it known that I feel like we have more to give and I'm expecting more of us. We should be winning more of these games. And Jackson Dart echoing the same thing. He said, you know what? I guarantee we're going to win more games because we have to. He told me this morning, the adversity of this season and the struggle is something that he's going to feed off of because he never wants to feel this way again. The young core of this team that is not attaching themselves to the identity of, oh, well, the Giants have been in a rut lately and that's just how it is. It's like, okay, that's not acceptable to us.
Well, they're not wearing that coat.
To do better. No,
not at all. And I think you just said the 2 words, young core.
Yeah.
Those are the 2 words that you have to put a lot of stock into, because there are times when you have a losing season in any sport, and if it's a older team, ton of veterans who've already seen their max. They're either already maxed out or they're on the down. Now you don't have a lot of potential upside. That's really the biggest difference with this team. And, we're burying the lead here a little bit. The Giants have already announced this morning that General Manager Joe Schoen is going to continue to hold the job here. If you've been watching this show for the last couple of months, this is not a surprise to any of us, okay? It goes back to the quote that John Mara, the co-owner, had said when Brian Daboll was let go, that he believed in the young core of these players and that Joe would lead the search for the next head coach. Well, if you add 2 + 2, you get 4, Madelyn. The last time I checked, easy math. Mm-hmm. That was the quote that was then, and we're going to hear more from both Mike Kafka, the interim head coach, and Joe Schoen, the general manager, at some point today. That press conference may actually interrupt our show. We may have to step away.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, if that does come about, we will let you guys know. We'll take an intermission from Big Blue Kickoff Live, and then we'll return after the press conference happens.
So, I mean, the point being, this was obvious. It would, to me, at least I thought it was. Again, 2 + 2 = 4. And the thing about it is, when you look at the potential franchise pieces, the foundation pieces that you need to have if you're going to be a contender, the Giants look at that and they say, okay, we've got guys either in their prime in those spots or guys who are still ascending and young in those spots. That combination is why we got what we got in the locker room today.
Absolutely. There's a identity and a personality with a lot of these young guys. We heard from Jackson Dart earlier today. Abdul Carter, Cam Scadaboo spoke as well. I like how you get. That's the reaction that most people have when you mention the name Cam Scadaboo. I would say every man to a T who's met this man lights up with a smile. He is such a spitfire, such a unique person. But just brings a lot of energy and joy to what he does. But what stood out to you about what Scad had to say?
I think when he was talking about his rehab and somebody said to him, "You think you're going to be as good when you come back?" He's like, "Oh, absolutely." Like, why would you even ask that question?
Why would,
His assertiveness, his passion, his intensity, his relentless focus on being who he wants to be is undeterred.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that I took away from him today, more than anything else. He absolutely is like a freight train. Yeah. I'm going to get where I got to get to go, and don't even think about questioning me.
Now, speaking of rehab and recovery, Malik Neighbors was also asked. He's still, using a cane, recovering from his knee injury, and he said he wasn't going to guarantee a week 1 return. I'm seeing a lot of people on social media taking that quote and making it more than what it is. But my perception after hearing him say it and hearing the context of the conversation is that he's not trying to set a deadline yet for himself,
right,
of saying, oh yeah, I'll be ready by week 1, and then what if he's not? He is listening to his body, and what he said is, when my body feels good enough to go, I'm going to get out there. And I think sometimes the way I'm seeing it construed on social media is not reflecting the intent of the point, which was that, listen, this was a significant knee injury for Malik Neighbors, and he's a guy who's an explosive wide receiver. He wants to make sure that he goes about the recovery process the right way before getting back on the field, before rushing the timeline, and that is the point that I believe he was making.
Well, he even cited understanding what Wan'Dale Robinson went through.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, Wan'Dale, that was no joke, all right?
Yeah.
His ACL was a big deal, okay? So he comes back from that and has a career year for the Giants this season, over 1,000 yards. And Malik said, I looked at what he did. I saw what he did. Malik's not a fool, okay? When he gets back on the field, he wants to be the superstar that he is supposed to be. He's not. He said, I'm not going to get on the field till I'm ready, which,
right,
to paraphrase what you just said as well, that's fine. And you know what? It's January, folks. We don't need a date. Yes, right. Yes, Scadaboo in his effervescence said, I'll be ready for training camp. That's the target.
Yeah.
I'm going to be okay, that's fine. Whether or not he's on PUP the first week of camp, who cares?
Right.
Okay? That's not the point.
We're all just managing expectations in our own way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The point is, really, when you get down to it, folks, Malik did indicate to us that they told him he had a lot of things wrong with the knee. Obviously, it was a devastating injury, but he said they told him the surgery was successful, and he is on schedule for whatever that means.
Right.
He is on schedule. I always tell people when they're involved in a medical rehab situation, look, I don't need to know exactly what you're doing. I don't need to know exactly where you're going. Just let me know if you're on schedule, because that means the doctors are pleased with where you are.
Yeah.
And that's more important than anything we think.
Yeah. As long as things are going well and going according to plan, That's all you can ask. And, coming back from an injury is hard in general. Coming back from an injury and returning to the caliber of a high-level athlete that these guys were at is even harder. And so, so often we're used to watching people do this and think, oh, yeah, well, how come you're not back by this date or that date? Each person, each body responds differently. And so we're going to be patient with that.
Good example is Micah McFadden. Did you get a chance to talk to him today?
No, but it was his birthday the other day, and I wished him a happy birthday.
Okay.
But yeah.
So he had the Lisfranc injury in his foot. Now that's a serious,
huge one. I mean, Andrew Thomas underwent that. Sean O'Hara, that ended his career. Lisfranc.
Justin Tuck had that earlier. One of the great Giant legends of all time, 2-time Super Bowl champion. So Micah was shooting for December, and they were hoping that potentially it might happen. As the weeks kept going by, and he's doing really well with his rehab, and to be honest with you, as he told me today, the doctors were really surprised at how well I was doing. But as we got to December, and the quote month of return was kind of on the horizon, he said, the doctor just told me, like, you know what? They don't feel ultra confident that, based on I'm still feeling a little something. And that could cause a very big setback. I could really screw it up if I push it. So he said, I wanted to make it back for the last couple of games.
Of course.
But they thought it was too risky that, I would re-injure it. And this guy's going into free agency, folks. He wants to be a Giant. He wants to stay. Obviously, he also understands he's going to have to go on a prove-it one-year contract with whoever he signs with, even if it's here, because of the injury. It's a serious injury.
Sure.
So he gets all of that, but at the same time, it was the Giants people who said, hey, we're going to err on the side of caution here. We don't want you to screw up your foot. We're going to keep you out. And he appreciated that.
Yeah, exactly, because sometimes you have to make a business decision in that way. Giants fans, make sure you go and subscribe to the Giants Huddle podcast. It features long-form interviews with Giants players, coaches, and front office staff past and present. Plus, you'll hear from the best analysts covering Big Blue and the NFL. Search for Giants Huddle and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, or simply go to giants.com/podcasts. And don't forget, if you're on Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star positive review for all of our Giants podcasts. It always helps us out. Like, comment, subscribe. You know the deal. 201-939-4513 is the phone number. Dots, the phone lines are lighting up. So let's have a listen to what some of these callers have to say, starting with Jason in New Haven. Jason, welcome to the show. You're on Big Blue Kickoff Live with Paul and Madelyn.
All right, Madelyn, Paul, Happy New Year to you guys and ladies.
Happy New Year, Jason.
That's definitely. So I'll make it quick. It was a rough season, but to me, there's some positives. Yesterday, congrats to Tracy. If I'm not mistaken, Paul and Madelyn, he's the third player in Giants history to have 2 back-to-back 1,000 scrimmage yard seasons.
Yeah.
No, in their first 2 years.
Yes.
In their first 2 years. First 2 years,
yeah.
Right. So congrats to him, man, for him to be I believe he was a 4th-round pick?
Fifth.
And to have that on his resume is pretty impressive. So, I know there's been a lot of negativity going around from the losing, but, I like to give some of these guys their flowers because these guys are putting their heart and, body on the line every Sunday. Jackson had another good game. That flipped Bellinger was very impressive. And I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but he definitely has the potential to be our quarterback going forward. What that will be in terms of playoffs and Super Bowls is yet to be seen. But, the arrow's pointing up. And even I was looking at his after the game, when he's talking to the media, and even today, and just the way he talks and telling people, this is not the standard going forward is very impressive for a young quarterback. To me, he just has it, whatever that quote unquote it factor is in terms of leadership and his confidence. I'm very pleased with how I'm looking forward to what his future is going to be with the Giants. Granted, health and some pieces around him. And the last point, Paul, you said it correctly. I think I called last week and made the statement as well, but I'll kind of reiterate what I said. Madelyn, you weren't on last week, but I never thought Joe was going to lose his job. I think he deserves another shot. No GM, and I mean no GM, bats 1,000. NFL, the draft is a crapshoot. Free agency sometimes is a crapshoot. And sometimes, in my opinion, the GM's job is to put all the pieces together. He's shopping in the grocery store. And it's up to the head coach to be the cook and put all the ingredients together. If he has some misses, of course, like most GMs, people will kill him for the Neal and the Thibodeau picks. And I think Thibodeau's been a pretty good player. And people kill him for Banks, but people won't mention drafting Bellinger and drafting Theo and trading for Burns and Illuminor is a free agent pickup, and Bobby O and Scatterboo and, Dart, So, I just feel like everything now with fans is a black and white. There's no gray area. And I think he's done enough to warrant keeping his job. I know some people don't like to hear it, but that's just what I feel. And hopefully next upcoming, with a new head coach, free agency period and draft, we can build around the edges, marginal improvements. And, all we can hope is that next year is a better year. And I like where this team is headed. So I appreciate you guys, and Happy New Year again. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks for the call and the positivity, and Happy New Year. And to your point, too, it's like, yes, you are grocery shopping, but it's not just, I think too often people zero in on that one time of a year of draft and free agency is the one run to the grocery store, but it's constant. You're monitoring free agents all throughout the season. You're monitoring practice squads. You're claiming players. You're elevating. You're making roster decisions all throughout the season, and all of those things go into the role of a general manager. And to Jason's point about Jackson Dart, too, credit to him. He set it Giants rookie franchise record for the most rushing touchdowns in a season by a rookie quarterback with 9. I talked to him this morning about it, and he's like, listen, I want to keep being me and doing what I do with my game, which is, using my legs, but do it in a smart way and evolve. And to his credit, he has gotten a lot better. He's sliding, he's working the boundaries and all that. And it's good to see that. And it's good to see the Giants end the season on a win over the Cowboys. They had lost the previous 9 straight games against Dallas. So it's nice to end that spell and get a dub against a division rival.
One of the things that we've seen during these problem years of the Giants, specifically on offense, is that in the final 2 minutes of the first half, offensively and defensively, things have gotten very messy for them going into halftime. And of course, and obviously in the last 5 minutes of a game, we all know what that record is this year. What happened yesterday against Dallas, when, by the way, both coaches were playing as many healthy starters as they had. Mm-hmm. Lamb, Pickens, Prescott were all in there for the Cowboys in the first half. They didn't come out till halftime.
In the first half.
Okay. And what happened? The Giants went 11 plays and 96 yards on a touchdown drive. The 96 yards is their longest drive of the season. Now, yes, there was a penalty involved in that drive. And yes, there was the kind of Mahomes to Kelsey flip that we saw Dart execute to Bellinger for the 29-yard touchdown. But it nonetheless was the longest drive of the Giants season, 96 yards. They go in for the touchdown, and with 20 seconds left in the first half, they're up 16-10, and that was the score as the teams went into the locker room for halftime with all of the healthy starters playing on both sides. Let's make that very clear.
Yeah.
Because in the second half, when Dallas benched all of their star players, the Giants also pulled out a bunch of their star players too, more so on defense. Not so much on offense, because Tracy was still in there, Dart was still in there, Slayton was still in there. It was more on defense. You didn't see Dexter Lawrence very much anymore. Mm-hmm. You saw a bunch of...
you didn't see Dexter Lawrence much from the start of that
ill.
One. Yeah.
He was ill. But he did play when he could on third downs early on. And on defense, I mean, you saw Carter eventually wound up coming out. Burns was out. I mean, they started pulling guys in the second half, too, defensively. And they ran up the score at that point and then blew out the Cowboys. But the first half, when you had all your available stars in it, the Giants did something that just made me smile a bit, and that was the execution in the final 2 minutes of the half, which has been a very, very bad blister for this team for several years. I thought that was really cool. And to go down the field like that, 96 yards for a score, that was nice.
As someone who sits next to you in the press box watching these games, I can confirm that Paul Dottino was singing Frank Sinatra going into the half.
You know, folks, there are
good.
times.
You know he's in a good mood when old Frankie Blue Eyes is coming out.
That's life.
There you go.
That's what all the people say.
I'm saying the joy that was emanating from Polly Dots.
And how many times have you sat, 3 or 4 seats from me, and you could feel the agony all the way down at the other end?
It's more the vibration of the table as the slams happen, but yes, yeah.
Anyway, we digress.
We digress. Giants fans, the Giants official connected TV streaming app Giants TV brings original video content and game highlights on demand and direct to Big Blue fans. Giants TV is free on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire TV, and on the Giants mobile app. 201-939-4513 is the phone number. Let's go back to the phone lines. Marcus in California. West Coast Marcus, welcome to the show. You're on Big Blue Kickoff Live with Paul and Madelyn.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Good. How are you? Thanks for calling.
I'm all right, man. Just wish John Mara a little bit more recovery each day at a time.
For sure.
I guess that a lot of people are going to be upset about Joe Schoen, but it's been done, so we need to support him and hope for the best. My only problems with Joe Schoen was not extending any players during the season and letting Illuminor, Flott, Robinson hit free agency. That kind of told me that ownership doesn't have any faith in him. I don't know why he's back, but he is.
Hold on. Let me just clarify something for you. I just want to clarify something. Joe Schoen's usual MO, and this has been the case since he's been here, usually he waits till the end of the season. He doesn't like to talk about contracts with guys while the season is going on.
Yeah.
That's his usual MO.
Yeah.
So this was nothing different. Now, there have been occasions, rare occasions, where they've had to do some of that.
Yeah.
But that's not the way he usually does business.
And while it's not anything different, I can still say, Marcus, I understand your point, and it's valid of, okay, now we're in a position where we're not negotiating only against yourselves, but you're negotiating with the market as these guys enter free agency with the accomplishments that they've had.
Now, there's another part to this, though. And I had conversations with all of the high-level free agents in that locker room this morning. I made sure I went to every single one of them. And what you have to understand as well is they don't know who the new head coach and who the staff is going to be. And they knew that as far as 7 weeks ago when Daboll was fired. The Giants wound up then 2 weeks later, not only they had the interim head coach, but then they changed the defensive coordinator. There was a tremendous amount of uncertainty. And as I had players tell me today, and they understood all of that, they said, hey, this is business. And they got a lot of bigger fish to fry in this building, worrying about their staff than they do worrying about my contract. Because there are players
both things can be true,
who
though.
don't always know if they want to be part of the new regime.
But Paul, both things can be true.
Sure
you can negotiate a contract with a player's agent while also understanding what's happening in the future of the franchise, and all of those things.
But the agent of the player don't have to talk about it either.
Right, but again, I do understand Marcus's point of wanting to get those things shored up beforehand.
Wan'Dale Robinson was very frank with me when he said, and he said to the other people too, the other media, he said, I got used this year the way I wanted to be used. He wanted to be a full-fledged receiver who was not just a slot guy. He wanted to prove that he could go downfield. He could run all the routes. He could also play on the boundary. He wanted to get the full playbook, in other words. And he said flat out, until this year, I wasn't happy because they weren't giving me the full playbook. They weren't letting me do all the stuff I wanted to do. Well, trust me when I tell you, Wan'Dale Robinson in 2026 is going to go to a team that not only is going to pay him, whether or not that's the Giants, I don't know, but he's going to go to a team that will pay him and that will give him that playbook. He is not going back to being strictly a slot wide receiver. That's not what he wants to do. He made that clear.
Go on, Marcus. I know you had some more.
I just have a comment on that and then 2 more questions. So the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. So it proves to me, and I'm just, a lowly fan, that Joe Shane's not willing to evolve or try something that hasn't worked for the last 4 years. Okay. He ruined our cap by bringing in Holland and Adebo, so we're in cap hell right now. I would like to see Thomas, Dexter, and another, I can't even think of the name I had, but Burns. I would like to see them extended with at least a void year and try to clear up some cap space. And I would just say, how long do you want to be here? Do you want to be here till you're 32? Let's get it done. Put a void year, no guarantees at the end of the contract, whatever you got to do to be a good GM. So my last two questions are personal, and I know they have nothing to do with what the front office is thinking, but I'm pretty sure you guys have an idea. Who do you want the Giants to pick with the number 5? And if you don't want to give me a name of a head coach that you want, can you tell me if you want offense or defensive-minded head coach? I told you guys last week that I'm leaning towards defense because I thought we should have had a top 10 defense, and I'm hoping another coach can motivate and get the best out of Deontay Banks. I would bring him back for his 4th year.
I understand. Not bad point at all, because Tay Banks is a guy who mentally was not the same player the last 2 years, and it showed on the field. And it was rough. It was really rough. But, yeah, boy, he's got talent.
He's got all the talent in the world.
He certainly does. And they need to Tay Banks has one more year left on his deal. They need to get the real Tay Banks on the field in 2026. That will be very, very important because he was a number 1 draft choice. So you're right. Whether it's the head coach or the DC, I don't care who it is. That guy's got to get through to Tay Banks and bring out the best in that player again. Thank you for the call.
Great points, Marcus. Thanks for the call. I don't know that it actually, I mean, this is something that maybe not a lot of people will agree with, but I don't know that it actually matters if the head coach is an offensive-minded or defensive-minded
He's got to
be
a CEO in my mind.
Exactly, because the point of the head coach or the role of the head coach is so far removed from the minutia of, like, yes, there is understanding, okay, this is the scheme we're going to run, this is what the plan is, this is the approach is. But you have to be able to delegate and trust your coordinators to handle getting in the weeds with it. And you're more, like you said, the CEO, the overseer, maintaining relationships with all of the players, understanding, managing personalities, understanding how to maximize and get the most out of a player, understanding which players need tough love and need to be, mother effed into it, and which players
sounds
need to
like
be
you want Bill Parcells to come back.
No, but I'm like, there's a balance, and each player, it takes something else. Not every person responds to the same coaching the same way, and
Absolutely.
so I think it's important to have a leader who is a CEO type person who understands how to maximize the talent and personality of each individual player, as opposed to forcing this roster into a scheme that this coach might be married to or a system that this coach might be married to. I use the example, listen, in New York, Phil Jackson, legendary NBA coach. Phil Jackson with the Chicago Bulls ran the triangle, found a lot of success with that. Goes to Los Angeles, runs the triangle in multiple iterations with the Kobe Shaq Lakers, with the Kobe Powell Lakers, because you have the personnel to run this scheme. Phil Jackson comes to New York with the Knicks and tries to run the triangle. But you don't have the pieces and the talent and the skill set to execute this scheme. So if you're forcing players to be into a scheme that they are not optimized in, you're creating failure. And that, Phil is a Hall of Fame coach, an incredible coach, not to take away from his talent as a coach, but you need to have a coach come in that says, okay, this is what I'm good at, but also let me take what you're good at and make the best thing possible. Let me look at the ingredients in the cupboard and make the best meal I can, rather than, oh, we're making chicken parm even though we don't have any Parmesan.
Oh, don't do that, please.
Exactly.
Please don't do that.
Nobody wants that.
Definitely not me.
So long story long, offensive, defensive, I don't think it matters as long as it's a coach that can get the most out of the talent on the roster and optimize the young core to build towards something.
Well, that's why I think the interesting thing that the Giants are going to have to sort through is not only do they want to prioritize, and interim head coach Mike Kafka will be one of the guys interviewed. We already know that they've said from the beginning that this was an audition for him, so he'll get an interview amongst whoever else they talk to. The thing about it is not only are you going to have to prioritize who your head coaches are, but you're going to have to find out from them, hey, who do you want as your coordinators? How are you going to delegate this? What do we think about the staff that you want or wish to put together? And that's the thing. And what if your number one pick, all right, Mr. X, head coach X, is your guy, but you talk to him, and after your half-hour sit-down with him, you're not real impressed with the guys he wants to bring in. You really don't, that's who he wants as his OC? That's who he wants as his defensive coordinator? Really? That's, we're not real high on those guys. So now maybe you think about, well, who was choice 2? Oh, wow, we like the way he wants to do this. He wants to be CEO, and we really like his idea for his OC, and we really like his idea for defensive coordinator. That could have an impact in who the head coach is that you hire.
All right.
It's a big deal. That's why you have those sit-down conversations. And then the other problem is, too, when you talk to these candidates, you have to ask them, okay, these are the guys you want. Are we sure we can get them? Because some of them are tied up in other places. And you have to be sure that you can also make those things happen if that guy is going to be your guy.
Yeah, fair. Got a few more callers to get to, but first want to remind you, Special Olympics New Jersey's annual Snow Bowl is headed to Rutgers Stadium in 2026. This annual flag football tournament will be on the field at Rutgers from March 6th through 8th, 2026. The 6-on-6 tournament will feature competitive, recreational, and co-ed divisions. All proceeds benefit the thousands of Special Olympics New Jersey athletes across the Garden State. Register your team today at njsnowbowl.org. That's njsnowbowl.org. We're going to take a quick time out here on Big Blue Kickoff Live because Joe Schoen is now stepping to the podium. We're going to pause here, and we'll be back as soon as he is done to resume the show. If you're calling, you're welcome to hold continuously or call back. But we'll be back in about 20 minutes-ish as soon as Joe Schoen is done with his presser, and we'll update on what he has to say. Thank you so much for your patience in this. And again, we're taking a quick time out from Big Blue Kickoff Live, but we will resume after the break. And we are back. Welcome back to the show. Thank you all for your patience. For those of you listening later in the week and wondering what that was, well, that was a quick about hour-long recess that we took, little halftime intermission on this episode of Big Blue Kickoff Live because Mike Kafka and Joe Schoen each went to the podium and had their Monday media availability here. So we've got more to dissect here on Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. Paul Dottino, Madelyn, Burke, back in the chair. Dots, first we saw Kafka to the podium, talked about, his effusive praise for the organization, his gratitude for the opportunity to serve as the interim head coach, confirming he will have an interview for the full-time position, but out of respect for the process, saying, you know what, I'm going to keep the rest of the conversations and the details about that process close to the vest, as they've spent the morning from essentially 8 a.m. to about 1 p.m. in team meetings, individual meetings, and position group meetings with each of the players, and then followed by Joe Schoen, who went through myriad of questions and topics discussing what the team is going to be looking for in their next head coach and what his beliefs are of this young core. But let's start with your takeaways from this, Dots.
Well, I think the biggest takeaway actually comes from Joe Schoen, because we've talked to Mike Kafka a lot over the last week or so, and a lot of the questions have been a little bit forecasting and reaching a little further. So we kind of know what he believes, what his core philosophies are, how much he loves this job, honors this job, wants to keep the job. And we also understand exactly what his coaching style is all about. So there's not a lot of inquiries there as far as we're concerned in terms of what we're trying to figure out. But I do think that Joe Schoen said a couple of things that are very important to understand about the framework and how this thing is actually going to go down. He said since Brian Daboll was let go, he and the ownership have constantly had communication about what was going to go on, and that he had already started to compile the list of potential head coaching candidates. He said very clearly there were no restrictions. They would look at college head coaches. They would look at NFL offensive and defensive coordinators. They are not going to limit this net.
Which is similar to what we were talking about before our brief intermission here,
Well,
that it doesn't have to be an offensive or defensive side. It has to be somebody that can provide the right characteristics of leadership, and developing Jackson was a point of emphasis there.
Well, yeah, in fact, we can go right to that point if you want. I listed, when I was taking down my Twitter notes, specifically he listed the actual things that he wants in a coach. He said here, let's see, I got to find
Developing Jackson,
yeah,
leadership, and communication were the 3 points that he made.
Yeah, there was something else in there too. I can't find it right now. I'll find it later on. But here was the point. He said he and his staff have been going through the candidates and doing the research and compiling the list. He just got done with exit interviews. After he was done with us, he was going upstairs to team ownership, and they were going to map out the plan for the interviews, and they're starting this week.
Yes.
So that's what we know. We also know that once the interviews take place, the owners will be part of the interview process. He made that very clear.
Yes.
He also made it clear that ownership will make the decision, but that he said it will be a collaborative effort. So I think you understand the way it's been with the Giants over the last several head coaches. Ownership did make the final call, but they did involve everybody in the room. So that hasn't changed. Much different than the days when George Young was here, and George Young made that call by himself as the GM, and ownership had nothing to do with that. Mm-hmm. The Giants, over the last how many coaches now, have done it this way. They will continue to do it this way. Also, it was made very clear by Joe Schoen he was not going to discuss anything regarding his contract status, because he was asked, are you getting an extension? Because a lot of people are thinking, well, if he's got 1 year left on his deal, he's going to be a lame duck. He said, I'm not discussing any of that.
He said he prefers not to discuss his contract and keep it private.
And you know what? It's his right to do that, and I agree with him.
Yep, and that news will eventually find its way public. But until then, for now, yeah, that's the status of it.
Now, they have told all the coaches on the staff that on an individual basis, if any of these guys want to go out and accept a job somewhere else, he said he'll talk to them on an individual basis. He didn't rule out that he would block anybody, and he didn't rule out that he would let them go. He said we'll talk to each one on an individual case, and then figure out what we're going to do. He said we got a lot of good coaches on this staff, and he thinks some of them could stay, but then again, you just never know.
Yeah. Now, Joe Schoen also talked about how, acknowledging, he said, my first couple of years, I made some mistakes. Fortunately, we have great ownership here where you're allowed to stub your toe and you're allowed to course correct. He opened his media availability with gratitude to John Mara and Steve Tisch and the ownership and the organization for giving him an opportunity to see this thing through. And also pointed out one of the things that he learned along the way was, hey, you know what? You don't draft play, because, he was asked, hey, you had one head coach in here. You're building a roster based upon what this coach, the ingredients that coach is asking for. Now somebody else comes in. How do you approach the draft and free agency with that in mind? And he said, one of the things I learned along the way in this tenure as his first time GM, when you draft players or you sign players, you want them to be versatile schematically, because as we've seen today, Joe Schoen says, coaches come and go. Those are important elements that he's going to be looking at as they build their draft board and look at free agency and look at, who is staying and going on this roster as they are also deciding the direction that this team is going to be going with their next head coach.
Yeah, the full list of what he wants the next head coach to have: leadership, football acumen, player development, a plan for the quarterback, holding people accountable, and communication. Yeah. That's the full list.
Yeah.
Those are the qualities that he specifically mentioned for the next head coach. And again, he insisted that Mike Kafka did a great job with this offense. I mean, pulled them from, the bottom to quite a high level in a number of statistical categories. And look, we know that's why Mike was brought here in the first place.
And, Mike also giving a lot of credit to the Giants' offensive line. I mean, we've seen for many years the offensive line is a point of emphasis to improve upon for this team. And Kafka saying really proud of our offensive line. Every single week they were going up against elite pass rushers and really stepped up. Whenever you have an offensive line that can play like that, you're going to have a lot of production on offense, giving credit to Carmen Brasillo and that group for what they were able to do. And, yesterday on Giants Postgame Live, we, talked about how not just the starting offensive lineman, but the way that Carm and that unit has created an environment where they are interchangeable, and the next man
Coach
up,
Ferencz,
and
assistant.
Coach Ferencz is assistant as well. They're interchangeable, and the next man up is able to step in and execute in that regard, especially considering a unit like an offensive line when you want those, 5 to be stable. And so a lot of credit being given to the offensive line in that group, and the improvement in the strides that they've had and the impact on the offensive side of the ball.
He claims there's no shortage of folks who think this is an attractive position.
Back to Joe Schoen here. Yeah,
Yes,
I was
Joe
quoting
Schoen.
Kafka.
I'm sorry.
Now you're talking to Joe Schoen again.
Yeah, and I think, this will be the last point that I would raise. And again, we'll take your calls, 201-939-4513. As you said earlier about admitted the Jones thing didn't work out because that was the plan to build around Daniel Jones originally. Then he said here, they've figured out right now, they have key pieces at core positions on reasonable contracts. Those would be veterans, people like Andrew Thomas he talked about, and Dexter Lawrence, who are, have been all-pro kind of players. And if you look at the market, they're actually got a nice reasonable number now, as opposed to, some of the other guys who are today, they're getting new deals. They're making huge bucks. So he pointed to that. He pointed to, obviously, the good young players, which we know have been drafted in the last 2 years, said we have some salary cap room, and we also have some draft capital. So he listed all of those things as also the fact that you're working for great owners, a great franchise with great tradition, and obviously a place where if you win, boy, it's great. So he doesn't feel like he's going to have much trouble at all in terms of the amount of people who want this job and good people who want this job because they see some prospects here.
He was also asked, too, about head coaching candidates who might be coming in and saying, well, how stable is the job considering a GM who, may or may not be on the last year of his contract? And Shane acknowledged, saying he recognized, with the situation we saw last year in Jacksonville, how sometimes that can come into play, but also underscoring how much confidence he has in the calls that he's received, how attractive this job is to those aspiring candidates. And underlined as well that the number one point that he's been getting is that coaches are excited to coach here because of Jackson Dart. Coaches are excited to come here because of the opportunity to coach a young, dynamic quarterback in Jackson Dart. And that right there is going to underscore, too, because I know, you see a lot of chatter about what if a coach comes in and wants to take things a different direction or wants what. I don't see the Giants pursuing a coach that would do that. But that being said as well, there is a lot of interest around this opening because of the quarterback.
I like the offshoot question. I forget, might have been Paul Schwartz of the New York Post who asked about, well, if that's such a big selling point, are you giving Dart some input in the decision? And Joe kind of chuckled. He's like, he's 22 years old.
Yeah.
Okay? We have a front office.
Not
okay?
Yet.
He said maybe he might meet a candidate or two. But I think that's about the extent of the influence that Jackson will have personally on the head coaching decision, but there is no question that his component is a big feature.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, reminder, 201-939-4513 is the phone number here. I know we took a brief time out here and have thrown off the timing of the day, but if you've got calls, we've got time. Dots, of course, they're going to be starting the interviews this week for potential head coaching candidates. In-person interviews, my understanding is they cannot start until the 19th.
Correct.
So it will be mid to late January before we see who the next head coach will be.
Yeah, they've got to do video calls right now.
Yes.
They don't have a choice. And obviously, you understand, folks, there are rules in terms of guys who are currently under contract to other teams that have playoff games to come.
Yeah,
there are small windows where you can
and this evens the
execute
playing
those deals.
field for potential candidates who may be coaching into the postseason who don't want to be, behind on the process because of that. So, yeah.
So, Joe did not, let me make something clear, while he did give us some sense of timetable in terms of how things are proceeding right now, he did not set a schedule for when they need to have somebody in place.
Yeah.
He did not even touch anything along those lines at all. So,
No.
quite frankly, I know, folks, you may not want to be patient, but I truly have no idea how long this is going to take. And again, let me make something clear that we said in the first part of our program, okay? And if you're looking on the archive, you'll understand why we're 2 parts today. I do favor personally, this is not a front office or a Giants organization opinion. I personally happen to favor a guy who has been a head coach before in this league and has won some games.
Yeah.
But when Joe said that the net is wide, and they will consider college head coaches, and they will consider offensive and defensive coordinators, hey, that doesn't mean that's what they're going to get. It doesn't mean that's their primary group of guys that they're looking at.
It means they're being open-minded.
He's being very open-minded about it. So let me make that very clear, folks. I've been asked for my opinion, and I'm telling you personally what I would like, and I'm very happy to tell you my personal opinion. But I am not speaking for the organization. Make it clear. They are looking virtually everywhere. They're leaving no stone unturned here.
Yeah, and that's the need right there, is you want to be looking and you want to keep your options open, keep an open mind, and there's an understanding of, yes, maybe there's a preference, much like you have, of saying somebody who has prior head coaching experience, but maybe you're dazzled by somebody who comes in and doesn't quite have that, but has a perspective that can help the organization in a positive way. Let's go to the phone lines. We've got James in Georgia calling in. James, welcome to the show. You're on Big Blue Kickoff Live with Paul and Madelyn.
Hey, what's going on?
Hi, how are you?
Adam. I didn't know y'all was going to be on right now. I was actually on my way to work. A lot of times I, got to write my stuff down to get my point across. I actually did call about, the coaching carousel and to make a couple of points. I like how Raheem Morris is now available. I would like him as my DC, the defensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of things I was calling about, just like how the team building, and I know some people are probably going to call on, why they keep Shane when, this could end up being a maybe 1 to 2 year spot, depending on how the Giants do. I think they like the people that Shane has brought in. They just need a coach that can coach the guys up. I think the fact that we had leads in a lot of the games, if I can gather myself, the fact that we had leads in a lot of the games and we just couldn't close the games out is what probably gave ownership optimism in Shane's roster, that the pieces were there, especially on offense, to put together 21-point games and things of that nature. I know I've called before and made the point of, why can't we go from, 15 points per game to maybe 21 or so, 3 touchdowns per game. I don't know if y'all have those numbers right now on,
not from your call, but they went up to 22 a game. I mean, they jumped nearly a touchdown a game, which was really terrific.
And when I called in the offseason or early in the season, I'm like, why can't we expect that, 1 touchdown per game isn't a whole lot to ask for, but when, we've had the offense, the struggling offense that we've had, I can see where, there was optimism and, y'all will always say you're asking for a lot, James, but we said, what did you say, we're at 22 points per game?
Yeah, 22. I think
you remember there was a stretch for like 3-4 years where the Giants couldn't hit that 20 mark.
Well, this year, the Giants, the number I have, I did a little research on this. The Giants this year hit the 24-point plateau 7 times this season, 24 points or more. The last time they had that many, they had 8 in 2018. Okay? So that gives you a real indication of how long it's been since the Giants have been able to several times ring that bell. I mean, I give this offensive line, in all honesty, the bulk of the credit for that. I really do.
I'll make one more point, and I'll let y'all go. People, media, fans, they'll say, Shane, he let so much talent walk out the door, and Barkley, Love, McKinney, and Cat. And I counter them with, we had to fix the offensive line. Joe Shane has effectively done that. Whether the coaching has gotten the best out of this team, no, we still have a bad record. But he has fixed the offensive line, and we couldn't pay Barkley and fix the offensive line. We couldn't keep McKinney and fix the run defense, or fix the pass rush, because we had Cat and Dexter Lawrence, and we were better run-stopping team-ish, but we were getting no sacks. We were getting no pressure on the quarterback. Now we're getting pressure on the quarterback. We're fixing that position, but, now we couldn't stop the run. So it's hard to put, when you're building a team, you got to pick from here, you got to rob Peter to pay Paul, whatever analogy you want to use. And I love Dexter Lawrence, and a lot of people will call and say you can't get rid of the best players on your team, but also you can't have one or two players eating at the cap. You have to be able to spread out your position.
No doubt.
Along, the front, the linebackers, and the back end,
James, thanks for the call.
Thanks so much for the call. I mean, it's kind of like when you're remodeling your kitchen on a budget, right? Sometimes you want to go in there and just sweep it all out and put it all back in, but not everyone can do that. So, okay, this month we're going to replace the refrigerator. Next month we'll replace the stove.
Do we really need a sink?
Yeah, maybe the sink's leaking, but, we'll get to that in the budget next year. One thing at a time, and it's, maybe the biggest problem changes, but eventually you got a whole new kitchen, and you're looking at it, and it's coming together.
Just a draft note for a moment. The Giants will pick 5th. We obviously know that. Ole Miss quarterback Trinidad Chambliss is actually live right now on ESPN. He's saying that he made the decision last night that he would come back for the potential 6th year with the Rebels. They have applied, he and the school, for the waiver, the redshirt waiver, to get that 6th year. They don't have it yet. It's not approved, but he's making it very clear that, again, with NILs, that's how come we're talking about deals with college players, right? He's making it clear that he has reached an agreement that he would come back with a 6th year of eligibility should the NCAA agree to it. Again, he said he reached that decision last night, just told that to ESPN.
Which is a big impact on draft boards and potential teams that will be
He's a very exciting player.
Absolutely. And with the Giants holding the number 5 overall pick, obviously not targeting a quarterback, but teams that might be targeting a quarterback that might want to trade up, that changes the landscape of things as well. To answer some questions, too, I see in the comment section, 11 Amani was asking if the presser's over. I didn't see any of it. Yes, the pressers are over. No, it was not live streamed. It will be put on Giants.com and the Giants YouTube later today once they get that cut and edited and put on the site. But they will have that up in its entirety shortly this afternoon, but it wasn't put up live. We just didn't have that turnaround today. And there was another question that I had seen in here, but you know what? I lost it. So we'll get back to that. But I digress. Anyways, 201-939-4513 is the phone number. Let's go back to the phone lines. Mike in Yonkers. Mike, how you doing? You're on Big Blue Kickoff Live with Paul and Madelyn.
Yeah, hey guys, I think I speak for every Giants fan. This is crazy that Joe Shane gets another year. He got 9 wins with Dave Gettleman's roster, then had regressed every single year since. He's let a lot of talent walk out the door without replacing it unless he gets a top 5 pick because his team's so bad. I just can't believe that the once proud New York Giants is standing behind a guy who's won 13 games in 3 years. It's devastating. It's the sign of an old team that I used to root for every week being gone. And my message to Giants fans out there who are just stick with it, I guess. I don't know when we're going to turn it around. If this guy's drafting, probably not soon because he lifts on everything unless it's the top 5 picks. I don't know. I'm just really disheartened. I feel like the standard of the New York Giants is not what it once was, and it's really a sad day for the Giants organization. I think it's a sad day, and he's going to scapegoat everyone else he can, but the quarterback wasn't his. That's all I need.
I understand your frustration. Thanks so much for the call, Mike. Appreciate you calling in. Listen, I don't know that it's fair to say he whiffs on everything that's not a top 5 pick. You got Cordell Flott coming in the 3rd round. You got Tyrone Tracy coming in the 5th round. You got Cam Scadaboo coming in the 4th round. You got a lot of late picks that have really made an impact on this roster. You got DJ Davidson, who's really coming in.
Well, Michael McFadden would have been a great example.
Darius Alexander. Yeah, Darius Alexander.
Just remember one thing, and this was kind of a shoot-off of Bill Parcells when he got to the Patriots, and then after a while fell out of disfavor, I should say, fell out of comfort with Robert Kraft, the owner, and then he said, you know what? If you're going to make me cook the food, I want to pick the groceries, right?
Yeah.
Well, the GM, the caller wanted to attach the record to the GM. Is it that fair to attach the record to the GM, or is that more on the coaching and the players?
I think it's a combination.
And that's the point. But he was strictly attaching it to the GM, and he wanted to lay the poor records at Joe's feet. And Ernie Accorsi.
I don't know if it's fair to assign meaning to that, because it didn't feel like he was strictly attaching it and laying it fully at his feet, but I think he was associating that in his time that was the record.
Let's put it this way.
Yeah.
Ernie Accorsi, who was legendary football guy. All right, we know from his time here as a GM, beloved GM of the Giants for many years. Ernie always used to say, my off-season is where I've got to do all my work. Once the season starts, I go crazy because there's not much for me to do with the team. I have handed the roster to the coaches, and I've handed the players to those coaches, and now they've got to perform. They've got to make the game plans. They've got to make the plays. They've got to fight through the injuries. They've got to do it. And there's not that much more that the GM can do once he turns that sucker over to the coaches.
I think that's oversimplifying it, though, because it's not like they're like,
that's
hands
how
off,
he felt.
I'm done with it, here's your turn.
It's
because
not he's
throughout
done with
the
it.
season, Paul, as you know, an injury happens, right? A player goes down.
It's
tweaks. It's the GM's job to say, okay, how can we manage that? How can we mitigate that?
Those are
here's
tweaks,
a player
Madelyn.
who is available, who is doing well, who's on this practice squad that we should really capitalize on. The GM's job is constant throughout the season. It's not like they do all this work for the draft and free agency and then they're like, pencils down, we're done. No.
That is the way Ernie would mostly present the job, because he said, like, it's all about that. And I appreciate that, yes, there are transactions that have to be made every week. There are injuries. There are potential jiggling of the contract numbers.
And evaluations.
It's not like the GM sits up on his desk and kicks his feet up and does nothing from August to January. That's not true. That's not. In fact, what Joe does, he actually goes out to college games and he studies and he scouts and he talks to these guys. He's on the road every weekend.
But also is evaluating the talent on the roster to understand, okay, how much can we get? How much value is this player worth when this contract negotiation
that's why he's got
come
staff.
up?
No, it's not so much him. That's more his staff.
Yeah, but he's got a finger on the pulse.
He does.
You have to in that position.
But Ernie's point is that the bulk of his work is done during the offseason, and during the season it frustrated the heck out of him because he said that's the least control. My hands are in it the least during the season of any other months in the year. And you know what? I understood Ernie because I'm a paisan. I get it. It was a stress level thing for him.
Yeah.
Because he would be like, I can't do a whole lot during the season to fix it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. We got time for another call. One more to wrap it up here. 201-939-4513. We got Lorenzo in Orange County, New York, not to be confused with the OC in California. Lorenzo, welcome to the show. You're on Big Blue Kickoff Live with Paul and Madelyn.
Hi, how are you, Paul and Madelyn? Happy New Year.
You too.
Happy New Year, Lorenzo. Thanks for calling.
So I just called up to discuss basically the retention of Joe Schoen. I'm going to speak basically, I can't speak for every Giants fan. I can only speak for myself. I've been a fan since 2005. I'm 31 years old. I have Giants jerseys, tiki, everything signed. I made a Giants channel. I just don't understand why you're retaining a GM who won 7 games in 2 years. I think he has had free agent whiffs as well. I mean, he attached his name to Daniel Jones when he signed him. Daniel Jones failed here. He got injured, went to Indianapolis. He prospered. That sometimes can be the system, which is completely understandable. If we're talking about the draft, I am going to have to agree with the last caller. Kayvon Thibodeau, top 5 pick. He's not playing like a top 5 pick. I believe he's playing average to above average, but not playing to that Pro Bowl level. Evan Neal, can't even see the field. Deontay Banks traded up for him, and I am going to agree with the last caller. I do not believe that Jackson Dart was truthfully his guy. So I'm not understanding a GM on now a 1-year contract who can not get signed or just get fired next year now has the power to select another head coach. My question is it because John Mara is sick? You know, we're all rooting for John Mara here, but do you think, in your personal opinions, that he can't go out and do the work, select the GM that he wants because he is battling a sickness?
I think that it would be purely speculative for us to kind of, opine on that, but I do understand the point, and I get where you're coming from. I think, there's a lot of layers to that, and it, partially too could be the fact that you look at a situation where the Giants have had a lot of turnover in the last decade of head coaches and general managers, and on some level you want to establish some semblance of continuity and letting someone see it through, and perhaps that's what this organization is doing right now. They're saying, all right, you know what, we agreed to a 5-year plan. Let's get this 5-year plan and see what we can get out of it.
The Giants had 11 draft picks in 2022, right?
Mm-hmm.
You following me? 11 draft picks in 2022. Evan Neal absolutely flamed out. It did not work out for a variety of reasons, none of which I believe were the general manager's fault, because he was universally regarded as a top 5 pick by every draft scout and draft nick that we heard from in that April's draft. So you can't blame him for that, because see, what I always do is when you want to go back and nail somebody for a quote high bust pick, you have to say, okay, was he drafting the guy as an outlier, right? Or did everybody, was it unanimous, that guy's going to be a top 5 pick? And that was the case with Evan Neal. He flamed out. But every team that would have taken him there, and they would have had a guy who flamed out. Otherwise, I'm looking at that draft, 11 picks, and the only guys who flamed out were Evan Neal, and in the 5th round, Marcus McKeithen, and in the 6th round, Darian Beavers, who blew out his knee. Mm-hmm. And his career ended because his knee never came back properly. Okay, that's 8 out of the 11 picks in that 2022 draft have either produced as a significant reserve or as a starter for this team. So I think you got to be really careful when you say he's missed a whole ton.
I just don't see it correlating into any meaningful wins, though. I mean, the past 2 years, we've had 4 wins in week 17 and 18, and I saw
all right.
That up.
Let me ask you, and I'm not being defensive or angry with you, but let me ask you this. Is that on him? Is the general manager responsible for a busted coverage, for lack of gaining takeaways or turnovers? Is a general manager responsible for that? Is he responsible for boneheaded mental mistakes in the secondary that give up a pass play to the Dallas Cowboys with seconds to go that allows Dallas's field goal kicker to hit a 64-yarder? Is that the general manager's fault?
No, that's absolutely not the general manager's fault.
That's where I'm going.
Listen, players need to play at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
But it could be the scheme, it could be the coaching, could be a plethora of different things. It all comes,
exactly.
I'm understanding what you're saying.
And
it's
the players were available,
GM.
and the players.
I just think the GM is, he is the face right now of the New York Giants. Everybody wants to see what Joe Schoen is going to do next, and 90% of this fan base did not want to retain Joe Schoen because in fear that it would ward off other head coaching candidates. Like if a John Harbaugh gets fired today or tomorrow, is he going to want to attach his name to a Joe Schoen? And I think that's
nobody knows.
Scares season ticket holders and just Giants fans all around. Listen, I went to 2 games this year, one at the beginning of the year, one at the end of the year, and I do it every single year. I've been on the field. I've unfurled the flag. I talk to Giants YouTubers, not that that means anything. You know, they're not part of the organization, but at the beginning of the year, the stadium is full, and at the end of the year, the stadium's empty. You know?
Yeah. Well, hey, I love the call because you sound sensible, and I appreciate the fact that you're trying to at least listen to some reason. The bottom line is you can have an opinion whether or not you like him, want to keep him, or don't, and we can have an opinion too. I'm not going to try to change your mind. I'm not. Let me make that clear. All I'm simply saying is this is my opinion, and this is why. You can have yours and why. I'm not going to change your mind, and you're not going to change my mind, and that's okay. That's a live and let live. We can agree to disagree.
And I think at this point, we're not really, I mean, I don't know about you, Paul, but I'm not in the point of having an opinion. I'm in a point of understanding this is the direction the organization is going. And so, all right, this is where we're going. Let's get on board.
And actually, that's the bottom line, because that's what they're doing. This freight train is pulling out of the station, and this is the track that they're going on. So you can either hop on and try to enjoy the ride and see which way they're going, or you could say, you know what, I just can't deal with this anymore.
Yeah, because
you got to figure it out.
Whether or not you think that Joe Schoen is the best option as general manager, he is the Giants general manager. And I think the best thing that, we could do for the organization is to support and encourage that to go well.
Oh, for sure. I agree with you both completely. And listen, I called. It's not to say that we are devoid of talent. I do believe this team is young. I do believe we have a young core. I do believe it's an attractive destination for a head coach. I want so badly, to sit down every Sunday, to go to games and cheer on a team, right now, next week, going into the playoffs, rather than the season be over in October. But listen, I don't want to take too much of your time. Thank you guys so much.
I hear you, Lorenzo. Thanks for the great call, and I agree. I think it's so. I would much rather, recap a win every week on Giants Post Game Live.
Trust me, we're on board with that, Lorenzo. I've been to 5 Super Bowls with this franchise. You think I don't want to go back to a 6th?
I don't know. You think Dottino is stressed in a losing season? You should see him in a winning one.
Holy moly!
This man, I don't know. I don't know. All right. Well, that's all the time that we've got today for today's show. Thank you so much all for tuning in and for listening and for your patience in our 2-part episode of Big Blue Kickoff Live, which will be merged together in one part for the podcast streaming networks, because with the magic of editing and television and all that kind of stuff. But, we started the show at 12:30. We're finishing just about 2:40. And interrupted by a nice little presser from Mike Kafka and Joe Schoen, which you'll be able to see in full on the Giants YouTube page as well as Giants.com. That's right for me for this season on Big Blue Kickoff Live. I know you guys are keeping it going in the off season. I'll be back during Combine and all that kind of stuff, but just want to say grateful to all the Giants fans for tuning in and watching all of our coverage throughout the year. And we've got a full week of Big Blue Kickoff Live, still programming, still as normal. Make sure to keep tuning in Monday through Friday, 12:30 to 1:30, to keep up to date with all the latest on the coaching search, the news that's continuing to evolve around the Giants and the NFL.
That's all.
That's all. All right. Well,
that's all.
That's all, folks. All right. On a Looney Tunes farewell for Paul Dottino, I'm Madelyn Burke. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Big Blue Kickoff Live, part of the Giants podcast platforms everywhere, and Giants.com/podcasts. From the Giants podcast studio, presented by Hackensack Meridian Health. Keep getting better. That's a wrap on our Monday, January 5th show. See ya.